chest up, knees out, stay tight. These are cues you've heard before. Trying to implement some sort of cue with your squat, bench, and deadlift, you're trying to use some sort of language to help you correct your lifting. But the problem is, it doesn't work. There is a system to this. We still get knee pain, we still get back pain, and we essentially just don't progress our lift. In this video, I'm gonna show you what I do to teach someone how to improve their technique through proper cue execution by picking the right one at the right time. I'm Gus Cook. I'm a powerlifting coach for the last 15 years, and I've coached the strongest athletes in the world. So I tried something new with my team, and we started implementing a collaborative approach to coaching. And what I noticed is we were able to make so much faster progress. And that's because I was able to get more systematic feedback, right? I'll implement a strategy, let everyone try it, and then I'll get a ton of feedback, and I'd see patterns. So some of the biggest problems were, first off, misalignment in intention. So when we say one thing, they think something else. And probably the biggest one was looking at it from a movement perspective rather than a muscular perspective. So in the bench press, people would think, oh, chest, triceps. But rather, it's actually a pressing movement. Because when you try to think of a certain muscle, you try to engage it, and we don't get the right intent. Then what happens is that people have the appearance of what you're trying to articulate rather than having exactly what that intent is. Next problem is that cues can have a very low resolution approach. What I mean by this is that when we say chest up, well, what's happening inside, right? We're getting a rise of the sternum, expansion of the rib cage, the upper back is extending, and then what is that doing to your core? What is that doing to your breathing? What is that doing to your shoulders, your elbows? And all this has a downstream effect. So I want to explain two concepts before I give you your takeaway points, because this will help clarify and help you understand the why. Number one is the hierarchy of motor control. We can break this down into three concepts: upstream effect, downstream effect, and proximal effect. So what an upstream effect is. An upstream effect is essentially things that you do from the ground affect everything upstream. Reason being is that every lift we do has to have an equal and opposite reaction, right? The reaction force is applied to the ground through the foot or through the bench in a bench press, and that has a huge impact on what happens up the lift. Then we have downstream. Things that happen above will affect things down. For example, if I say chest up and that drives the sternum up high, what effects is that happening to the rib cage, the diaphragm, your bracing, and your pelvis? Then we have the proximal effect. So things that happen close to our body, which we can say our core, has a outward effect to distill performance. So if we don't, say, example, brace correctly, that means we'll have less control of the pelvis, which means we have less control of the legs, means less control at the knee, and so on. So when we look at this hierarchical system, we have to think upstream, downstream, and then proximal. Part two, cognitive overload. Now that we understand this hierarchical effect, what we need to do is be strategic with what cues and information we give to someone so that they can acclimate that technique and then build upon it. If you cross too much information at once, they have no time to prioritize and master the foundational underlying core principles that maintain a solid, healthy technique. Now, there is a 4-step process to this. And the 4 steps is, number 1, unconscious incompetence. Unconscious incompetence is that an individual is unaware of an issue. That's it. They're unaware of a problem. My job, or their job, is to get them to understand that they have a technical issue. So if they can be consciously but incompetent, which is stage 2, then they have awareness of the problem and they start to be able to correct it. Now, it is better that they understand the incompetence than me just giving them the cue. Understanding connects the cues. Then stage 3 is the consciously competent. They start to know what is wrong. And at this stage, the cognitive load is starting to reduce. It becomes autonomous. It starts to become instinct, which is stage 4. Unconsciously competent, meaning they don't need to think about it. No matter what happens, they will be able to perform that. Now that I have a core foundation of a movement, I can stack more on top. Okay, so I want to introduce to you a concept I created called anchoring. So when we keep in mind the upstream, downstream, and proximal effects, what we can do is that we can put a specific attribute and cue for each lift to one of these things. So let's go over each lift. Let's start with squat. Now I'd say the anchor points for the squat would be the upstream effect, would be midfoot. Why is midfoot so important? Midfoot is the pathway of the control of our center of mass. Force moves through the ground, the force comes up and affects the entire position of the lift. If the force starts to move forward of the foot more in the forefoot, right, we're going to have a compensation. We're going to want to drive our chest up because we don't want to fall forward. What's that going to do? Have a downstream effect to our pelvis, changes how our knees operate. So usually depth issues, back pain issues, knee issues can come from focusing on midfoot pressure, drawing that towards the rear foot more, and having a balancing point between forefoot and rear foot, trying to acclimate a midfoot pressure. Right? If you can keep midfoot pressure, it makes your job 10 times easier to control the squat. Number 2 for squat, head position. Right? Wherever we look, we usually want to go. So we look up, we end up falling back. If we look down, we end up falling forward. Biggest problem, people put their head down. Now, when we put our head up, we don't want the chest to also follow. We need to keep this in position, keep the head up. Now, what this does is that it prevents the downstream effect. Okay, so if we start to look down, our shoulders want to roll forward, we lose the chest position, we lose the core, we compensate. Usually what would happen is that'll push your center of mass forward. When you come up in the squat, the bum comes up, you tip forward, then we've lost it. So that's probably anchor point number 2. Anchor point number 3, which we can call the proximal one, which is the sternum position. At all points of the lift, we always want to maintain rib cage, I would say sternum, or a concept I like to use is pump handle. Keeping the sternum, if it's a pump handle, we keep it down. We do this without brace. So we take that breath in, rib cage down, brace. When we brace, that keeps the sternum in that position, and no matter what our head's doing or anything else is doing, that stays down. So if you fall forward, you're going to naturally want to pull your chest up. Instead, focus on the other points, maintaining pressure through midfoot, still keeping this down, and try to let your body figure the rest out. It's important you try to figure it out because people will start to think, where do I go, right? I feel like I want to fall forward, I have to overhinge. Well, control your center of mass, maintain that position, let your hips come back a little bit more, and as you let your knees travel over your toes, you'll find you still be able to stay upright without the change in position making you fall forward or overly hinged. So the key is the 3 key points: midfoot pressure, head position, rib cage. Bench press. So the anchor points for the bench press, it's a little bit different. The concepts are still the same. The pressure point, where we have the counterforce, is actually on the back of the neck, because the counterforce needs to be countering the upward movement. In a squat, it makes sense. We squat up, we push down. In a bench press, we have to push down on the bench to push the bar up. So if we can maintain neck pressure, then the rest of the body can start to sort itself out to maintain that. And some people feel, oh, my foot position, I start to lose my foot position, right? And I lose the pressure of the neck. Well, that means you've got to change your foot position rather than change your arch or anything else. Keep neck pressure. Proximal cue, sternum. Pump handle up. This stays up. Now, at all times, if that starts to drop, you're going to get back pain. The mass is going to come off, the pressure is going to come off the neck, and it's going to move towards your feet, which your feet don't actually drive the bar. Which leads to the next cue, maintaining good foot pressure. If we maintain really good leg drive, that's going to keep the pressure on the neck and keep the sternum up. The leg's role is to help neck pressure and sternum position maintain. If we can't create that connection, we lose the bench press. We have force that moves away from us, but we need all the force behind the bench. So the leg's roles becomes to maintain the counter force that we produce into the bench press. Deadlift. It's very similar here. The number one, upstream effect, midfoot pressure. All right, we'll just keep saying midfoot pressure. It's super important. It fixes everything. If you come forward on your toes, you're going to arch your back, you're going to get back pain, and when you do that, the bar's going to yank you forward, and essentially you're just putting a lot of stress through your lower back. If you can get this nice coordination between foot pressure and the force you produce into the ground, you're going to get a really smooth lift. Sternum position. This needs to stay down. When you pull on that bar and push the ground away, there's a lot of force you're trying to overcome. You cannot hold that sternum up. It's going to pull you down. And when you do that, your back goes through flexion. When your back goes through flexion, you compromise the health of your spine. So we need to keep the spine, again, the principle of deadlift, we need to keep the spine completely stable. We do this by keeping the sternum down. Okay, this becomes the proximal cue. If we keep the sternum down, right, we set ourselves up so that we don't yank on the body. Rather, we transfer the force out of the bar, through our body, and into the bar. And the bar moves nice and smooth, body stays rigid. Third is shoulders forward. This is the downstream effect. If we try to keep a straight upper back, let's say we try to extend our upper back, again, you can't overcome that force when you apply a huge amount of pressure into the ground. We actually want our shoulders rounded forward. So we have this shoulders forward, rib cage position down. It's like, oh, my back's rounding. It's like, yes, the spine can handle having a rounded back if it is stable. And we focus the rounding to be more on the upper back and not the lower back. The lower back is where the problems happen. If we have chest up, right, and you try to squeeze our back, then the bar, your back's got to bend somewhere because it's a lot of force pulling down. If that's holding you together, it's going to become all lower back. So you have to focus on these points. These become the main points to work on, and then you can utilize specific cues to help maintain that. If you can both create awareness and then an effective cue, something easy to remember, and the client can connect it and understand its importance, you're going to have a lot more effective training someone's technique or training your own technique, because you can't overcome the amount of force that is applied, the force of the bar, the force into the ground, and the force of gravity. And if you're trying to do something little to fix a problem, but you can't overcome the majority of the force and its impact from upstream, downstream, and proximal, there's no hope. You're just going to keep having the same problem.